schoolroom in the snowdrift, we have the eclipse over here. I put her there to represent the eclipse. That light is there. Oh, here, yeah. We have the sun represented by the light and the moon represented by the light is there. Oh, here, yeah. We have the sun represented by the light and the moon represented by the circle put directly underneath it so that the eclipse is ending here. And then we have the 23rd, and then we have Neptune with the trident. That's the sign of Neptune. And retrograde represented with the R. There's your retrograde in the graffiti. That begins. Neptune stations retrograde on June 23rd. There's your 23rd. The eclipse is ending here. And then we have the 23rd, and then we have Neptune with the trident. That's the sign of Neptune. And retrograde represented with the R. There's your retrograde in the graffiti. That begins. Neptune stations retrograde on June 23rd. There's your 23rd, June 23rd. The still waters are not going to be still anymore. Psalm 23. Neptune, of course, is the god of the sea. He's Poseidon. The trident in the target. And it is, I've not figured it out yet. I've compared it to the Statue of Liberty torch, which is another very bright object. This is a very bright object. I think it's the brightest object in the entire video, and it lines up pretty well with this flagpole. And that is a very bright light. And We haven't figured out what it is. And if you watch it with the sound and watch them backing up, the cameras were backing up. As soon as this enters the picture, the sound goes ding. It makes a sound when this shows up.
George Washington and many of the founding fathers were, of course, well-known Freemasons. Pay special attention to the 3 cubes forming the body of the lighthouse. We'll see this symbolism again in London, and finally decode it in Paris. How is it that we keep finding secret connections to ISIS in ancient Egypt, in a country that has no ostensible reason to make this symbolic linkage? Believe it. Pay special attention to the 3 cubes forming the body of the lighthouse. We'll see this symbolism again in London, and believe it or not, Pennsylvania Avenue is astronomically oriented to the heliacal rising of Sirius. The ancient Egyptians based their calendar on this phenomenon, which is the day when Isis's star, Sirius, is visible on the horizon just before sunrise. From the White House in early August, Sirius is visible a few minutes before sunrise, directly behind the Capitol building. From the perspective of the Capitol building, sunset on this same day passes straight down Pennsylvania Avenue and sets over the apex of the pyramid atop the National Post Office. If you overlay a pair of pentagrams over the Capitol building, a couple of interesting things occur. These edges follow Pennsylvania and Maryland Avenues, and RFK Stadium from 1961 is framed perfectly in the crook of the opposing pentagram. I noticed 4 radiating streets above and below the Capitol building. Then it clicked with the pentagrams, and I see what is actually depicted here is the Templar cross. Can there now be any doubt who is behind the program of symbolism in D.C.? The Templars may be long gone, but the Scottish Freemasons remain active today. We'll learn more about the Templars at Chartres Cathedral. I already heard about one Heliopolitan obelisk next to the Met in New York City, and its pair on the Victoria Embankment in London. Rome has the remainder of the Heliopolitan obelisks left in the world. Heliopolis was the cult center for the 9 great Egyptian gods, collectively called the Ennead. We'll learn more about the Ennead in San Francisco. In the first decade of the 20th century, G.I. Gurdjieff went on a mystical journey where he met with a number of remarkable men. At Mount Athos in Greece, he was supposedly entrusted with the key to decoding ancient Egyptian knowledge preserved by the Sufi Sarmang Brotherhood. The key he received is the Enneagram, and the means to decipher it. The Enneagram is the fundamental hieroglyph of a universal language. All knowledge can be included in the Enneagram, and with the help of the Enneagram, it can be interpreted. Gurdjieff's philosophy was popularized by his pupil Ouspensky, and through him the Enneagram found its way into modern psychology. The Enneagram of As I already mentioned, the axe historique is aligned with the heliacal rising of Sirius, known as the Star of Isis, but the Grand Arch is turned approximately 6 degrees with respect to this axis. This is of course no accident. Everything has a purpose. Can you imagine the mind-boggling planning that went into the Grand Arch alone? Groundbreaking architectural design that ties together layer upon layer of hidden symbolism, completing the hermetic masterpiece that is Paris. Jim Allison has found what the Grand Arch is pointing to. Are you ready for this? It points to the birthplace of Isis in Dendera, Egypt. This tiny, unassuming temple out and back of the larger Hathor temple is known as the traditional birthplace of Isis. The location of the small cube within the larger enclosure matches the azimuth where the Grand Arch is facing. Remember that the heliacal rising of Sirius was the basis of the ancient Egyptian calendar, signaling the beginning of a new year. Isn't it amazing that the Champs-Élysées and Pennsylvania Avenue share the same astronomical orientation with this tiny backwater in modern Egypt?
Whatever this is, before the buck moon. We have a pin there, or a bullet hole, or something that indicates target there, before the buck moon. And what I'll do now is I'm going to go on and I'm going to show you in other places that we have this as well. Is our lunar south node. The buck moon is a penumbral eclipse, and it's a lunar south node eclipse, and this is the symbol of the lunar south node. This is before it. Here is your pin. Here's your target, and it is the flagpole, and the U.S. is torn in half here. Now, I have yet to figure out this.
America is burning. For a 6th night in a row, anger flooded streets across the deeply divided country.